No, I don't think so. Okay. So first of all, we're going to open up this legislative committee agenda. First of all, this is a meeting for 11 o'clock. I will start off with a roll call. I will start with Miss Kate LeBeau. Here. Miss Hannah Mason.
Here.
And Miss Mason is
Yes.
our board president, and then she has an announcement as far as a replacement of someone on this particular committee.
Thank you, Superintendent. Yes, I am I'm removing Chad DeZarmo.
Okay.
And I'm adding Mr. David Lejeune here to our committee. And just the reasoning is Chad's work schedule will not allow him to make our meeting. So thank you, Mr. Lejeune, for accepting.
So Ms. Lejeune is here. All right, so we do have a quorum. We have 3, and Mr. Lachele is not here, is absent. So we do have a quorum of 3 out of 4. So the very first item that we need to do is 2.1, which is selection of a legislative committee chairperson. For this committee, what I'd like to do right now is open up nominations for anyone who would want to be considered as far as the chairperson for this committee.
All right, I have a nomination. I'd like to nominate Kate LeBeau as the chair.
All right, we have Miss Kate LeBeau.
And I second it.
Well, let's just, we don't have to second. I just need anybody else who wants to be the chairperson. All right, well, there will be no vote on this. We will close nominations as far as chairperson. Ms. LeBeau is our chairperson, and I'll turn over the gavel to her. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dangerous to give me a gavel. Okay. We've done agenda item 1.1 roll call, so I'll move on to, and item 2.1 is complete. So item 2.2, review and discussion of the superintendent legislative education reform considerations. And I'll turn it over to the superintendent for his comments.
So, members of the committee, I want all of you to know that you were all part of, or some of you were, I think all of you were part of the legislative breakfast that I had with the team of senators and representatives. I want you all to know that we've met with them. We sent them a summary of a follow-up of those different things that they needed to kind of look at. In your packet, you will see the summary of that that was sent to them. Just recently, I CC'd Ms. Mason, our board president, on a follow-up this past week. The session is coming close to beginning. Yesterday and today are the last 2 days for our state senators and our representatives to file any bills. We will also have, and what I was told by Mr. Haney is that there will be at least a 5-day late submittal that each of the different representatives and senators can actually submit, but everything needs to be done by March 31st. I didn't get any traction initially from us sending it out the first time. The second time that we sent this out, I have been on the phone with, believe it or not, our state superintendent, because some of our legislators contacted him about some of these different things. I was able to have conversation with some of the representatives, and it looks as though we're going to have some of this stuff that's going to be taking on by some of our representatives that we had at our breakfast. And let me just kind of just talk through in general what that means. First of all, DCFS. The first thing that all of us need to understand is that our employee services, they do background checks. This has nothing to do with background check. We will know whether or not someone has something that is on their record through that background check. In addition to that, we have to run those even after the background check through DCFS. And basically that is taking up to 30 to 60 to 90 days. And we wanted to get in front of that and make sure that at least we would be able to have some type of provisional hiring that we could do while that particular, those results come back in. So you can see it in red. That's the language that we use, that we wanted to make sure that that actually was something that they added. We'll see. I think Dr. Chasson is one that will be taking on that for us. He is actually drafting it and bringing it and putting it in front of us that they can actually vote on that to give us that type of provisional service. The second was bus drivers. There was more of tenured bus drivers had less ability to actually come in front of you guys. Now we have 1 to 3. If you're a 1 to 3 bus driver, if there is disciplinary actions for the 1 to 3 bus driver, I had to before I would dismiss anyone from a job, I'd have to bring it in front of the board to where anybody from 4 on, that would not be the case. All we're saying is make it consistent one way or the other, and they're taking that on. The third thing was dealing with expulsions. We just wanted people to kind of be aware of some of the language that was dealing with 3 out-of-school suspensions and where that would kind of lead to as far as students are concerned. Third grade retention, Ms. Richard and I were been on the phone with members of the Department of Education and just making sure that they understand that there needs to be on that one assessment that probably takes 1 minute more that we are able to consider before we actually retain a third grade student. I did on that call reiterate to the Department of Education that this particular law that requires the third grade student to be retained on that 1 minute assessment is not the case for any private school or any charter school student that is in that third grade at the same time. So the rules are not the same, and I just feel like that is an advantage that parents could actually move their kids from a third grade class here to a third grade class at charter, and they would actually move on to 4th grade because that assessment itself. So we're going to hopefully get some traction from that. Then last, number 5 was student testing. Again, Ms. Richard, along with Dr. Robley, really emphasized the importance of trying to minimize the testing that is going on with our third grade students, especially. We did get some results back that they're going to be reducing some of that testing. Dr. Brumley's team kind of talked to us about one of those math assessments are going to be removed. Literacy and numeracy training, you will see that again, that is a lot of mandates, unfunded mandates that we wanted to make them aware of. And then we kind of just had some comments at the bottom, but just wanted to kind of give you guys an update that that breakfast was very beneficial. I'm going to tell you that they have said to us that we need to do this in the fall. So we are putting it on our calendars to make sure that we get those legislators together during football season in the fall, because if they're going to take on anything from Lafayette Parish, they need to know it as early as possible. So we'll make sure that we make that change for next year. But we did follow up this past week with them, and that's where we saw a lot of traction take place. So I really feel like it was a very beneficial meeting, and it was well worth the time that we spent as far as making sure that we educate them on their needs, on our needs. But they also kind of told us that one thing, and I want everyone to know that there's going to be something that legislation that they're going to be putting up, which is the amendment to the Constitution, that they stated that the one-time stipends that teachers and support personnel were getting in the past, that they've had to go find funds for, if this does not pass as far as the amendments are concerned, in the spring, we should not look, or teachers or anyone should not look for any additional funds, because they're saying that if they could actually pay down the debt as far as the retirement system is concerned, then some of the reductions that we would actually see in what we would have to pay the retirement system is what we would use for teachers to get a $2,500 permanent salary, and support personnel will get less. So again, that's going to be a very important legislation that is going to take place in May. I will be getting with my team. Again, I think we're going to need to go out and educate our teachers and personnel out there, because what I don't want is for people not to take advantage of this. Because if this does not pass, we've pretty much been told that this is not going to be a reality as far as these one-time things moving forward. So It's going to be important. They have assured us, and I think all of you who were there, that there's not going to be anything other than what I just stated as far as paying down the debt as far as retirement and us having to pay less, and we'll be able to use that money to be able to get these stipends done as a permanent thing. So there won't be any catches in that particular amendment. So that kind of concludes the updates as far as legislation meeting that we had, and I want to thank each and every one of you and all of our board members who did come. I think it was a big success.
Thank you, Superintendent. I also want to echo thank you to all of our legislators and senators that came. It was very well attended. I want to thank the superintendent for making an emphasis to build those relationships, because as the #1 large school district in the state, we should be leading the way on legislation, and the Acadiana delegation is really strong. And if we don't have those relationships in place and we're not aware of the bills, we're not making ourselves, and the superintendent told them, use our staff as a resource. If there's a bill and you don't understand it, or you need to know the effect it will have on education, please use my staff as a resource. So I'm grateful that you're making that relationship stronger, but we're also letting the legislators have that resource to make sure that whatever legislation they're putting in place only benefits the students and the parents and the families of our parish and statewide. So thank you for doing that. I do want to say that we do have a lobbyist that we do hire. This is not a fiscal session. Every other year, obviously, there's a fiscal session, so the legislators and senators are limited to 5 bills each that are not financially associated. So because it's an even year and it's a non-fiscal session, they can file as many bills as they want. And so far, there's been 29 filed for education, or that are going to go to the Education Committee. And that's not the only ones that will affect us. Obviously, there's bills in other committees that will also affect us. So it's really imperative that not only do we meet with our lobbyists constantly and make sure that we're advocating for the bills in the way that will be most beneficial to our parish, but that we keep those communications and relationships going with everybody. So we did invite our lobbyists to come today, but they are, this is their busy season and they had a conflict. So we will be touching base with them on all the 29 bills once we review them. Plus, as the superintendent said, they can continue to file bills until, I think it's 5 p.m. tomorrow, and then I think they have another 5 days emergency to file bills. So we're probably looking at March 3rd before we'll see the totality of bills filed and be able to review those and get with our lobbyists. But we will probably ask them to come at some point for an information item, if the committee recommends that, to the full board, so that we can get a real clear picture on each of the bills and how the major issues that are facing our parish. So thank you. Anybody else have anything to add on the legislative session, Ms. Mason?
Yes, I would like for us to keep track of which legislator is taking charge of the ask that we have. We know that, Dr. Chasson is working on the DCFS clearance. I found out this morning that Josh Carlson is working on I think he's actually already dropped the bill for the workforce clearance for high school students. Just so public's aware, in order to get a job at age 16, you have to come to the Lafayette Parish School Board to get approval. So, am I saying that right? Can you clarify?
It's the work permits, yes, ma'am.
Okay.
It's the work permits that even if you're in a private school, you would have to come to the Lafayette Parish School System to get your work permit. In the public schools, we do offer them during the school year at the school level, but in the summer and private schools, everyone comes here.
Right. So, we feel like that's a barrier towards, our young folks getting jobs. So, that's something that Josh Carlson has brought to a bill for us. But I would just like to keep track of who is carrying what, so that we can continue conversations and support them, when they are in session, and because they will need more support and evidence and all of that from us. So, and also, can I just say thank you to Kate LeBoux and our superintendent for working so hard on this. Is this only the second year of our legislative committee? This is our first year, sorry. We talked about it all last year. And so this committee is finally formed and happening, and for years I feel that we've had a lot of complaints about what state legislation forces us to do, and we're finally putting our words into action, and we are getting a hold of what we need, what changes we need in order to move forward better together. So thank you to Superintendent and Kate LeBoux for making this happen. Thank you.
And I also just want to tout Ms. Mason is serving on the board for the Louisiana School Boards Association, which is a huge lobbying and advocacy piece also for public education in our state. So thank you for your service. We're going to work in conjunction with LSBA to even strengthen our advocacy even more, to make sure that we are pushing for advocacy and lobbying for the correct bills that will, and the correct outcomes for our parish and our students, and statewide, obviously. We are being touted on the national stage for our growth in numeracy and literacy. So everybody is actually looking to the state of Louisiana on what they're doing, and we want to make sure that we don't hinder that growth, or that let legislation through that's going to put more requirements on us that will prevent our teachers from being able to actually do the training and the education and the teaching that is resulting in the growth of our students.
Thank you. Yes, LSBA is keeping track of all education bills and trying to support local school districts in providing evidence and giving them guidance on how to work with their legislators to make sure that they're getting their legislators to write bills that make sense and make sense in the classroom. So thank you.
Thank you. So Mr. Hammonds can ask a question. Do we need to do a committee recommendation if we want to, recommend that we bring our lobbyists to the meetings to provide an information item on the bills, or if we want to have any type of, a presentation to the board on our recommendations or outlines of each bill that we think affects the parish?
I think as chairperson of this committee, you can just make that request. I don't think that necessitates any type of action of the committee.
Okay, great, thank you. We will be doing that. We will make sure that we are advising the full board and bringing in our representatives and different groups to help make sure that we're all united on what is taking place at the Capitol and what actions, if any, do we need to take. So thank you.
I would like to request that we have a legislative committee update at our meetings. Put it on the agenda, have the legislative informational item, especially with this session coming. So
Okay. Can't take an action on that, or just we can do? Okay, we'll make it a recommendation. So let's make a recommendation for the committee that we do a legislative update. Does everybody agree? Okay.
Do y'all want it in March, or you want to wait till April? Tell me at what point do you want to?
I think we wait until April, unless we see a pressing committee meeting that is scheduled prior to that. So that would be my recommendation, is that we just monitor. Once we have the full evaluation of the bills, then we determine when those bills will go before committee, because once they're read on the House floor, they usually recommend for committee, and committee is the first place that action can be taken. So we'll just evaluate that, I guess, once all the bills are filed, and we determine at what timing would be most pressing or most beneficial for us. If everybody's okay with that. Okay. Item 2.4 is policy review, and this is something that I think goes hand in hand with legislation. Most of our Lafayette Parish School system has a very thick and large number of board policies, most put in place because of legislation, but also because of certain things that we want to memorialize in our parish, to make sure that the procedures in place and that different things are in place that will help our board and our system function. So, but a lot of those policies have not been reviewed in many, many years, and there are several that are either outdated, possibly conflict with state law, or just, they've been amended and then there's conflicts within the amendments because of new legislation. So I know that we have a great attorney who does review all of our amendments to our policies, but we haven't done a real comprehensive view of the entire policy itself. So I just think it's incumbent upon our board I would recommend after this session, because obviously with 29 bills that we know of plus coming down the pipeline, I'm sure there'll be more legislation that will force us to amend our policies, that we just begin a comprehensive review of our policies in general. This is not something that will happen overnight. There's too voluminous, and in some of these policies reference 8 to 9 different statutes and bulletins and different things. So this is going to be a pretty large undertaking, but I think it's worth doing to make sure that our board is efficiently serving and putting every policy that we have in place is actually necessary and serving the purpose and aligns with state law and also aligns with the way that our parish functions. Because some of them do have procedures in place in the policies that possibly the procedure's outdated. So that would be my recommendation to our committee, is that we begin undertaking, once we've gotten through the legislative session and made sure that we have not let any new legislation come through that shouldn't, that we didn't advocate for, to make sure that it's not the best thing for our parish. But then once we have the final, in July, the final acts in place that we know will become law, then I think we undertake a comprehensive review of our policies to see, whether they're correct, efficient, necessary, outdated, all of that. So that would be my recommendation to the board, is that we undertake that probably beginning in August.
Yeah, Ms. LeBou, I'll just say that we'll start getting with our attorneys, and we'll start looking at some different things that we can slowly. We don't want to be taking this on, because as you stated, there'll be some things that'll come from the legislature that'll make us have to do some things. But there are still some things right now that we can kind of start looking at and start making changes, and we won't be rushed. It will take us some time to get there. But we want to make sure that, as you just stated, we review over some of these things that are just, it's not something that we need to be doing, and we need to be, putting in front of our staff and so on and so forth. So we'll make sure that process begins, and we'll start, and we'll keep you guys updated on some of those changes. In fact, any of those changes would have to come to y'all.
Great, I appreciate that. And staff, please know that we're going to try to, this will be a team effort for sure. But we appreciate the fact that it will be a better result for the entire parish if everything is, reviewed, and we make sure that we're not taking on additional policies that are no longer, or undertakings that are no longer necessary. So anything else? That's the end of our agenda. So does anybody else have anything to add, Mr. Hammonds?
Yes, and Ms. LeBou, first let me thank you for our phone call earlier this week. I thought it was very beneficial for me. But I did ask you one question, and it raises itself here. Historically, changes in board policies have come directly to the board. Will they now begin to come to this committee for the committee to review and to make recommendations to the board? Or should those recommendations for policy changes continue to go directly to the board?
I think it would be most beneficial if it probably came to this committee first, depending on the urgency and necessity. If there's a deadline within the legislation that requires us to make that change, then we probably need to, bring it to the board floor if we don't have time to have a committee meeting. And that's another thing. We haven't really set a time how frequently this committee is going to meet. So I would like to propose that we meet monthly until at least session is over, and then maybe reevaluate to quarterly if we think that the policy review is going to take a long time. But I think obviously we want to get through this session, make sure that we're up to date on all the legislation, and then in August, I think our board probably will have to put some policies in place that the legislation is going to mandate for next school year. And then I think that comprehensive review will probably take a long time, so maybe we can meet quarterly thereafter if that makes sense to everybody. So, Mr. Hammond, to answer your question, I think it just depends on the urgency of if there's anything this session maybe that has to be implemented, we bring that immediately to the board. But if there that policy review thereafter, I believe we could do in committee as long as there's nothing that, again, has an urgent deadline on it. If that's
Yeah, and
sounds reasonable.
that's fine. I just want to get it clarified for the purposes of the staff as to how to do that. And also, you know, as the board attorney, this committee has the authority to take votes. And those votes become the recommendations of the committee. And as we talked about briefly the other day, it may be worthwhile to do that, such that that's going to change your agenda a little bit, Ms. Christie, because what we would then be showing would be the recommendations of the legislative committee. You know, would be listed somewhere on the agenda. Now, in my mind, it could still be a consent item, but the item would be recommendations of the legislative committee. And that may be to change policies or amend or delete policies. Those would be your recommendations as voted on. So you would have a record of having discussed them in committee, and your fellow board members would know that these policies not only have been reviewed by staff, but they have actually been reviewed by a committee of the board before they get to the board for approval. And I would think that would make some of the board members even more comfortable to approve policies knowing that this committee has already studied them.
Yeah, that's how I foresee it going after this session. If there's nothing that we have to urgently put into place in August, I would prefer if our committee actually vetted it and did recommendations to the board, because I think that process would go a lot more smoothly. So yeah, that's how I envision it happening after this legislative session and we get through August. But prior to then, we may have to bring them directly to the board if we don't have enough time to meet in July and thoroughly vet that recommendation. Does that sound good to the committee?
Sounds good.
Okay. So that being said, is everybody, let's set a time and a frequency of meeting. Again, I think it'd be beneficial to do monthly up until August. And then I think we could switch to quarterly as long as there's no prohibition to do that, or every other month while we undertake the comprehensive policy review.
So we want to, is this a good time as far as, I mean, do y'all want to make any changes? We'll get to the scheduling as soon as possible. Like if you're saying that we're going to go from March all the way to August, once a month, we want to get those on right now.
Yes.
'Cause a lot of people will be scheduling different things and we want to make sure. So Christy will work with the four of you guys to make sure that we get the right times. But I just need to know, is this the right time for us to meet, or do we need to do anything different? I just need, time-wise, it's important.
I mean, my only thing would be that we meet at noon instead of 11 on a Tuesday or on a Wednesday.
Okay.
But we can hash out the exact. I don't know if that noon, if noon is good.
Yeah, or 12:30 even, if you need
Okay.
more time. I know that's a
Yep.
conflict. We had talked about a conflict she may have.
I'm retired.
Yeah.
Poor David.
Mr. Vice President, does that work for you?
Good.
Okay. Okay, so tentatively, we'll set it for monthly at 12:30, the dates to be determined, and working with the staff, and obviously those will be published in accordance with the public meeting laws. And I think that's it for the agenda. Does anybody have anything else they'd like to add before we adjourn? Okay, then this meeting is adjourned.